What's for dinner?
That's my childhood right there. Wow. That was really good.
Hey everyone, I'm Chef Z and welcome back to my channel, Chef Z Cooks. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make an easy arroz con leche, which is rice pudding. Now, if you guys have had rice pudding before, then you know that it is creamy, it is sweet, super decadent. And this is something that actually really brings me back to my childhood because this was the #1 after school snack that my grandmother would make, and she would actually portion them out in little mini bowls and then have them waiting for us. And my cousins and I would fight as to whether who would want to eat it at room temp, warm, or cold. So comment down below and let me know which way you prefer to have it. Now, I will say that I already have a video here on my channel where I show you how to make arroz con leche, and that's a little bit more of a traditional recipe. And today I'm going to be showing you another way that I like to make it, which is actually much closer to the way that my grandmother would make it, and I'll go into the nitty-gritty about that later on. So to make this arroz con leche, we're going to be using some long grain white rice, which I went ahead and I pre-washed, but you can also use some medium grain rice or even some short grain rice. I'm going to add some ground cloves. That's optional, but I absolutely love the flavor that it gives the rice pudding. Some vanilla extract. I also have some sugar here. Now with the sugar, I find that it's easier to add than it is to take away, so I just have a little more sugar than I know I'm going to need, and I'll explain that a little bit more later. I have some cinnamon sticks. I also have some lime peel, which is going to give it that classic Dominican and Caribbean flavor. I also have here whole milk, and I also have some evaporated milk because I like to mix the two together. It really gives it some nice flavor. I also have some water and a tiny bit of salt because anytime you're making something sweet, the salt is actually going to balance everything out. So we're gonna go ahead and we're actually going to start making the rice. And this is what's actually different about this recipe than the one that's already on my channel. I actually made everything on the stove. So the rice wasn't pre-cooked or anything like that. Hold on. That was the extension cord. The rice actually wasn't pre-cooked. And I actually find that cooking the rice first makes this dish come together so much quicker than when you make everything on the stove. And I find that the creaminess and the sweetness really comes alive. Now, you can actually use some leftover rice whenever you're making this dish. So I'm gonna go ahead, I'm going to add some salt. Not too much, but just enough. I will say that whenever you are making regular rice, you probably salt it a little bit more, but that's totally fine. It's not going to alter the flavor at all. Now, let's say that you are making the rice just like I'm making it today with the purpose and the intention of making some rice pudding. Now, one of the things that I recommend that you do is that you actually make it a little bit fluffier and you add a little bit more water than what you typically would do, because that's only going to help the rice pudding come together even quicker. So that's one of the tips and tricks that I actually like to do. So typically, I will say that I use a 1-to-1 ratio whenever I'm making your rice. And listen, rice is totally personal, and I can go and talk to you for like an hour about the ins and out of making perfect white rice. Stick to the ratio that works for you. For me, that's a 1-to-1 ratio, but because I know I'm using this rice for some rice pudding, I went ahead and instead of 2 cups of rice and 2 cups of water, I did 2 cups of rice and 2.5 cups of water because I really want that rice to be super fluffy. Again, it's just going to speed things along. So I put the rice in, and now this is the best part about this whole thing. I'm just gonna press that down in about 20 to 30 minutes. This is really going to come together. This rice cooker is not fancy, but she gets the job done. I'll link it down below for anyone who's interested, and I'll see you in a little bit. Okay, so it's been roughly about 30 minutes and the rice is perfectly cooked, which is the great part about using a rice cooker. So now I'm going to fluff up the rice just because, oh yeah. Now look, the rice, this rice right here, it's a little sticky, but that means that it's actually perfect for the arroz con leche. Now, if I was making rice for myself to eat with rice and beans, you know, the faves, that's when I stick to my 1-to-1 ratio and the rice comes out perfect. But because I want to speed things up when we're making our arroz con leche on the stove, I don't mind that it comes out a little sticky like this. I will say if you're using a short grain rice, that tends to really overcook really easily. So I would just pay close attention. Now that our rice is done, we're gonna go ahead and we're going to bring this all together on the stove. So here we go. All right guys, so now for the fun part, we're gonna start making our arroz con leche, and I'm just gonna go ahead, I'm gonna turn this on. And just for reference, I just set my pot to a medium flame because I just feel like it's a little bit easier to control. Now, this is where things get a little bit different than what you're probably used to making your rice pudding. We're gonna start off and we're actually going to take our evaporated milk, and we're gonna add that to the pot. Now, I do have some extra milk right here, and this is roughly about a cup, but I'm not gonna add it to the mixture just yet because so much of making rice pudding is actually just kind of going by sense of touch. Well, not sense of touch because that's a hot pot, but sense of feel and just eyeballing it, because it really comes down to how thick you like it and how creamy you like it. And I just feel like every rice pudding just acts a little bit differently. Like sometimes the rice really absorbs it and it gets too thick and then you have to add more milk to it, or sometimes a little bit too runny and you kind of have to let it thicken up. So you always want to have a little extra milk off to the side for that very same purpose. Now to this, we're going to add about 3 cinnamon sticks, and it's totally up to your liking. Me personally, I love an arroz con leche that's full of cinnamon. I am now going to add, let's see if I can get one here, these lime peels. And these are actually really easy to cut if I can ever get one. Now you're probably used to seeing these in like cocktails and stuff. And in a lot of Dominican sweets like avena and farina, we actually like to add them to it because it gives it a very subtle citrus flavor. It's not going to taste the same as though you took a lime and you just squeezed it in there. If you did that, you could actually run the risk of cutting the milk, which is something that we don't want to do. Now, the way that I got that perfect little lime peel is that I actually took a potato peeler and I just cut the skin off, because you just want the skin because that's where all the oils are. If you don't have a potato peeler, that's totally fine. You can just use a paring knife or a knife that's small enough in your hand that you feel comfortable controlling. We're also going to add some vanilla extract. I'm using 100% vanilla. I'm also going to be adding some ground cloves. Also optional, I just love, love, love the flavor of cloves. Gives it a nice earthy flavor. We're gonna mix everything until it's well combined. I actually like to warm up the milk first, and that's because I really wanna start extracting a lot of the flavors from the cinnamon sticks and the lime peel. And I find that when you just kind of add everything to it, you don't actually develop the flavors. And developing the flavors over medium heat and layering them step by step is truly going to give you an arroz con leche that's out of this world. So I'm going to let this come to a simmer for about 5 minutes, and then we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna move on to the next step.
I don't know why you like moonwalked off the stage.
Did I moonwalk off the stage?
You did the homer. I was like,
So we're gonna let this simmer for about 5 minutes, and then I'll see you in a very short amount of time. Okay, so the milk is perfectly warm, and you can tell because some steam is coming off of it. You actually don't want it to come to a full boil because you actually don't want to scorch the milk. So now we're going to actually add the rice. And I actually like to add the rice before I add the sugar, because the sugar can actually prevent the rice from fluffing up in the milk and stop it from absorbing some of that cream. So if you're using some leftover rice, which may actually be like a little bit hard, then this step is super, super critical. So if your rice is a little bit hard, you definitely want to let it boil in the milk for a little bit longer. My rice is practically done because, again, I cheated a little bit and I added a little extra water to help this step right here speed up. So that's definitely a neat trick for you. Now I want to make sure to get all the rice in there. I'm gonna go ahead.
And now we're just going to mix it all in there. Oh yeah. And all I'm doing is just breaking up the rice ever so slightly because it's a little clumped up, but it's still going to really absorb this cream. Guys, this really takes me back to my childhood. Like, it already smells divine. Now, just know that once we start adding the sugar to this, you are married to this stove, because once you add the sugar, it's obviously going to start to caramelize. So you want to prevent it from sticking to the bottom of the pot. Right now, like I said, I'm just breaking up the clumps of the rice. So I'm not so worried in this moment of the rice sticking to the bottom. I'm gonna give this probably like another 3 minutes. I really want this to start coming together. And then we're going to add the final touches to this dish that's really going to just be one of the best things that you've ever had. Okay, so now we're going to add the sugar. And this is where things really get personal. I'm only going to add half a cup right now because it's easier to add than it is to take away. However, if you have a really big sweet tooth, feel free to add a lot more sugar. Spoiler alert, I actually don't have the biggest sweet tooth, so I don't like things to be too sweet. Now, my sister really loves rice pudding, and she likes her rice pudding a lot sweeter than I like mine. So you can definitely adjust it. If you wanted to add some sweet condensed milk, you definitely can. You can even add brown sugar to this. I just highly suggest that you always just taste it before adding some more. Let's see if it's ready. That's actually really good. Surprisingly, it needs a little bit more sugar. My sister's probably watching this being like, I told you so. So I'm just gonna add a little bit more. Add like about 1/4 cup. Now I always keep some extra on hand. I'm also going to add just a little bit of milk. Let me stir this first. Oh yeah. One thing about rice pudding, once you add the sugar, do not leave the stove. Mix and stir constantly, especially if you're not using a non-stick pan. The other thing to know about rice pudding is that it actually thickens as it cools. So right now, this may seem a little bit runny to some of you. It may not be thick enough, whatever have you. Like, you can cook it as long as you want. Just know that if you cook it super thick now and you're gonna store it in the refrigerator because you actually might like your rice pudding on the colder side, if you chill it while it's already super thick when it's hot, it's going to get even thicker. Always keep that in mind. Now, if you're someone who likes it warm and hot, or even at room temperature, this is actually perfect. Before I claim victory, taste this one more time. Okay, we're done here. Well, almost. We're almost done. So this is actually perfect. We're gonna go ahead. I'm gonna see you now on the island, and we're gonna add the final touches. And we're gonna go into a last few tips and tricks for this amazing and super easy arroz con leche. Okay, so my favorite part of the day is finally here, and that's when we can finally enjoy this easy arroz con leche. Now, couple of things about this dish. You can definitely use some lactose-free milk if you're lactose intolerant. You can even use some plant-based milks as well, but I will say that using the plant-based milk may change the flavor just a little bit. Now today I'm going to have it warm, and I actually like to have it both ways, both warm and cold. I find that the flavor profile is a little bit different. Plus, I actually like it when it's a little bit runny, when it's nice and warm. And of course, gotta add that final bit of cinnamon at the end. Absolutely love it. Now, I will say that when you're going to store this in the refrigerator, it's gonna last you anywhere between 3 to 5 days. And remember how we added the lime peel and the cinnamon sticks? You definitely wanna take those out. All right, moment of truth. That is so good. Perfectly sweet, perfectly creamy. That tiny bit of, well, not tiny, because I did a little healthy sprinkle there, but that extra cinnamon at the end is so good. Comment below and let me know if you like your arroz con leche warm or cold, and also let me know like which flavor rice pudding you like, because I know that people tend to flavor them a whole bunch of different types of ways. Now, if you need some inspiration on what to cook next, definitely I can't speak, that's how excited I am. You guys know the deal. Subscribe to my channel, give this video a huge thumbs up, and click right here for more videos. I'm so hungry, I'm gonna dig in. That's so good. I can eat the whole thing, my goodness.